They came in silence at first. No grand speeches, no glowing lights in the sky. Just a quiet ripple through space as the Zarn Dominion crossed into Sol's system, their fleet blacker than the void, hungry and confident. Earth had been under observation for years. The Galactic Council debated our fate like we were livestock. Dangerous, unpredictable, primitive. They weren't wrong, but they didn't understand us, and they never did. I remember the day it started. The sky didn't fall. The sun still rose. But something shifted. The feed was interrupted. Global blackout. Military channels started pinging. Civilian internet snapped off like a light switch. The kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, but the one before a storm. I was stationed at Fort Spire, Alaska. Deep black recon, off-books projects. My name's Cole Anders. 37, decorated 3 times for acts the government won't even admit happened. When the alerts hit, I was already awake. Some part of me always knew it was coming. We'd been warned, you see. Not by prophets, not by politicians. By them. Years ago, when the first probe entered our system, we shot it down within minutes. Not because we were paranoid, but because we knew something was watching. That was our warning to them. Don't. And then we sent a message back. Short, brutal, human. Come any closer, and we will burn your sky. It became a joke in certain diplomatic circles. Earth's temper, Earth's madness. Earth, the war-soaked rock of savages with nukes and nationalism. But they should have known. Our insanity is our weapon. The Zarn didn't listen. They sent scout ships. We turned them into metal rain. Then they sent a vanguard. That didn't end well either. And finally they sent the Purge fleet. 50 capital-class carriers, hundreds of support cruisers, millions of soldiers bred in vats to conquer without emotion. All armed with weapons that tore apart planets like fruit. We didn't have numbers. We didn't have their tech. What we had was hate. History. A long, dirty history of clawing through blood to stay alive. They hit New York first, flattened it in 4 minutes. The news showed screaming civilians vaporized mid-step. The Zarn didn't announce themselves. They just started killing. As if we were insects, as if their technology made them gods. But here's what they forgot. Gods die too. And when men have nothing left to lose, they don't kneel. They fight. They sharpen their rage and throw it like a blade. At Fort Spire, we activated Protocol Ashfall, a scorched earth strategy buried so deep in classified files it didn't exist on any digital record. It was humanity's final answer. A series of countermeasures designed not to win, but to ensure no one else did either. We called it the Bastard Doctrine. If we couldn't survive, neither would they. The first counterattack was at the edge of Mars. Not a space fleet, just 12 ancient freighters welded together and packed with fission cores. Suicide missions. No guidance, AI, pilots only. Volunteers. I knew every name. I trained them. I watched as they tore through the Zarn blockade and detonated inside their command ship. The explosion was so violent, it destabilized the moon's orbit for 22 seconds. And still, it wasn't enough. They kept coming. Until we went worse than nuclear. We went human. There's a moment in every war when fear stops mattering, when the numbers don't mean a damn thing, when you realize the only thing left is rage, and rage doesn't need permission. That was Earth after the Mars run. The Bastard Doctrine had been activated. Diplomacy was dead. And humanity? We had nothing left to save, except the right to hurt them back. I stood in Command Sub-Level B, deep beneath Fort Spire. Concrete thick enough to outlast a direct orbital strike. My face was hollowed, jaw clenched. The lights overhead flickered in rhythm with seismic tremors from distant impacts. Somewhere far above us, cities burned, oceans boiled, and people screamed into smoke-filled skies. I couldn't save them. Not now. But I could make sure someone paid. We'd tracked the Zarn fleet's formation across Earth's upper stratosphere. No subtlety. They were flaunting their superiority, hovering over our capitals, orbiting like vultures. Their communications weren't taunts. They were orders. Surrender and be processed. Resistance will mean eradication. Processed, like cattle. These things didn't understand how deep the roots of resistance ran in us. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a graveyard of empires, every inch of soil soaked in defiance. Romans, Mongols, Nazis, corporations. We burned them all down when they went too far. Now it was someone else's turn. They picked the wrong species to press. I walked into War Room Omega, a steel vault of dark screens and even darker intentions. Men stood there like statues, soldiers, black ops agents, former war criminals we'd pulled from holes in prison cells. Monsters, every one of them. My people. Our last hope. We all knew the plan. Project Guillotine. It was never meant to be used. A contingency inside a contingency. The kind of weapon that made nukes look polite. Chemical warfare, child's play, biological weapons, already anticipated. But Guillotine was built for revenge, not survival. "Status?" I barked. Major Griffin, an ex-CIA wildcard who once leveled a Bolivian city just to kill one warlord, turned toward me. Alpha teams deployed in Berlin, Seoul, and Rio. Beta teams en route to Shanghai, Sydney, Johannesburg. Launch codes are being hard-loaded into secured carriers. All teams are green. Casualty projections? Griffin's jaw tightened. Everyone. I nodded. Good. We didn't need survivors. We needed martyrs. The Zarn hadn't come to conquer. They came to erase. They wanted our silence, our obedience. Instead, we gave them screaming, bleeding resistance. Our weapons weren't as advanced, but we knew where to hit. They had fleets, we had fury, they had shields, we had sabotage, they had protocols, we had spite. Our first real strike was in Sector 9, Manila. A Zarn outpost, newly dropped into the ruins of the city center. Scans showed minimal defensive positioning. They underestimated us. Again. We didn't send troops. We sent a train. Specifically a half-mile-long, manually guided freight train, wrapped in tungsten plating, stuffed with antimatter cells we'd stolen from the Hadron Black lab. No AI, no targeting systems, just velocity. And madness. The tracks had been rigged over 3 nights, scavenged from decades-old subway ruins. It launched like a phantom, no warning, no signal. It tore through the Zarn structure like a goddamn spear. The blast radius left a crater 2 miles wide. Everyone in a 5-mile radius, human and Zarn, vaporized instantly. We marked it a success. We had thousands more successes to come. But retaliation wasn't all fire and bombs. We needed psychological war. We needed to infect them with fear, and nothing spread fear faster than what we did in Mexico City. Zarn command vessel Tihar Vel had landed on the outskirts, turning the once vibrant city into a slave bay. They didn't kill everyone. Number that would have been too clean. Instead, they harvested, tested. The Zarn saw our bodies as data, our minds as errors to be corrected. But they made a mistake. They kept us alive. And one man escaped. His name was Briggs. You won't find him in any service file. Not anymore. Too unstable. Dishonorably discharged after an incident involving 3 officers, a live grenade, and a very bloody poker game. But when everything burned, we called him back. Briggs didn't just escape the Zarn facility. He tore it down from the inside. They thought pain would break him. They didn't realize we grow in pain. He killed 12 Zarn with a rusted metal chair leg in sheer hatred. Then he used their own tech to call their orbiting ship. Played victim, cried like a child, begged to be taken back. They opened the doors. He stepped aboard with a grin, and 30 pounds of lithium explosives inside a corpse bag. We never recovered the ship. Didn't have to. The explosion lit the night sky like a second sun. And then the real message began. We hacked into their network, fed them videos, footage of Briggs torturing their crew, laughing while he broke their bones, feeding their own blood to their machines. We looped it into their war command, made sure every Zarn in orbit saw it. The reaction? Panic. For the first time, they changed patterns, retreated, reassessed. They learned something that night, that humans don't die clean. We don't vanish into silence. We drag our enemies with us. But every war has a price. Mine came one morning, cold and silent. Fort Spire was breached, not by force, by betrayal. Someone on the inside fed them access codes. We were ambushed at 0400. They used disruptor drones, the kind that melt bone before the nerves shut down. I lost half my unit before I could even raise my rifle. Screams echoed down steel corridors. The stench of vaporized flesh choked the air. But I didn't run. I crawled to the central control, blood leaking from a dozen cuts, and initiated Cerberus protocol. A final failsafe. Self-destruction. They would not get Fort Spire. As I dragged myself down the hall, I saw her, Marin, my second in command, fierce, sharp, loyal, or so I thought. She stood beside a Zarn general, speaking in their tongue. I recognized the gesture. Submission. She sold us out. I raised my sidearm. She saw it, too late. 3 rounds. 1 through the chest. 1 through the throat. 1 through the eye. She fell before her alien handler could react. Then I set off the charges. I didn't die, not because I was strong, because fate wanted me to see what came next. I woke up 3 days later in a resistance outpost near Montana, half my body wrapped in dermal grafts, right arm gone, left eye replaced with a tactical lens. And still I lived. And I remembered. Everything. Fort Spire, Marin, the betrayal, and now it was personal. That brings us to now. The world is ash, but not defeated. Resistance cells operate under a new banner, Operation Tombstone. We don't try to win, we try to haunt. Ambushes, guerrilla raids, psychological warfare. We hit supply ships, kidnap high-ranking Zarn officers and drop them, alive, into acid pits. We skin their symbols into trees. They think we're monsters. They're right. We're done playing by rules. Done pretending to be civilized. They burned our homes, so we'll salt their soil. They wanted war. Now they've got hell. Because they were warned, and now they burn. It was around the time of the Black River campaign that the Zarn realized they weren't fighting for conquest anymore. They were fighting for survival, and we were the wolves circling their last campfire. They'd tried orbital dominance, failed. Ground superiority, crushed under our scorched tactics. Now they'd fallen back to tactical occupation, fortified zones, holding points, energy domes stretching over what was left of major cities. London, Tokyo, Lagos, glass domes lit with sterile blue light, pulsing like open wounds. Inside them, Zarn tech rebuilt itself, breeding more soldiers. Fast, efficient, merciless. But there's one thing they couldn't rebuild. Morale. That's where Operation Tombstone shifted from retaliation to psychological extermination. We started calling ourselves Deathborn. Not soldiers, not rebels. Something darker. Something the Zarn would whisper about in their filthy tongue. Something they couldn't decode, couldn't predict, and couldn't destroy. I led the first incursion into Dome 7, their forward command center in what used to be Johannesburg. 12 of us went in. Only 4 came out. And we dragged hell with us. The approach was suicide. They'd ringed the dome with auto-scorchers, plasma mines, and synthetic watchdogs. Bioengineered creatures built from stolen human DNA mixed with something far worse. Their bodies moved like men, but their faces were wrong. Too smooth, too silent. I killed one with a carbon spike to the brainstem. Its body didn't bleed, just hissed and curled like paper in a fire. I didn't care what they were made of. They were still made to die. Inside the dome, it was a different world. Clean, pristine, white floors, humming walls, a smell like fresh plastic. No dust, no chaos, just that eerie silence again. We moved through their hallways in near blackout, using disruptor suits we'd salvaged from a downed Zarn scout ship. Painful to wear, like being stabbed by static, but effective. Made us invisible to their thermal scans for about 7 minutes. 7 minutes was all we needed. We hit their data core with a fusion drill. Not to destroy it, but to take it. We downloaded every file, every comm log, every mission plan, and buried a virus so deep in their network it would take them years to find. We called it Whispers, a cognitive disruptor. Not for systems, for minds. It piggybacked on their own neural links, feeding them false memories, visual glitches, nightmare scenarios. Made them see things, hear things, imagine betrayals, panic. We fed them horror loops from our own past. Dresden, Fallujah, Nanking, the Rwandan genocide. Images they couldn't contextualize. Pain they'd never felt. And worst of all, we inserted human laughter. Just that. Echoing in their heads when they least expected it. Reports came fast after that. Zarn officers turning on each other mid-briefings. Mass suicides in command units. Squads locking themselves in shield rooms, screaming until their throats tore out. We never fired a shot. We let the virus rot them from the inside. By the end of the month, 4 domes had collapsed. They tried to adapt. Upgraded their protocols, purged corrupted AI nodes. But it was too late. Whispers had learned to rewrite itself, to evolve, just like us. That was when they brought out their final card. Not a weapon, a deal. They dropped a message pod over Antarctica, old school delivery, metal shell, no tech infection risk. We cracked it open like a coffin. Inside was a single file. Proposed ceasefire negotiation, terms of submission. I read it 3 times. They weren't offering peace. They were offering to let us live. In caves, under surveillance, controlled breeding programs, strict technological limits. They even had a term for it: humane containment. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my own spit. They still didn't get it. We weren't afraid of extinction. We were afraid of chains, and we'd rather be dead than ever kneel again. I sent them a reply. 4 words, burned into the skin of one of their dead commandants, dropped into orbit from a hijacked shuttle. Not 1 inch spared. After that, they stopped playing fair. No more prisoners. No more mercy. They turned their atmosphere scrubbers inward, began terraforming entire regions to Zarn conditions. Air unbreathable. Skin cracked within minutes. They weren't even trying to conquer anymore. They were trying to make Earth theirs. And still we didn't stop. In Detroit, we used electromagnetic bombs that shorted out every Zarn suit in a 10-mile radius. Then we sent in the ferals, humans who had gone so deep into the wild they didn't even speak anymore, just growled. Bit tore. They didn't use guns, they used teeth. In Moscow, we cracked a Zarn genetics lab and turned their own cloning vats into gas chambers, flooded the room with nitrogen, locked the exits, and made them drown in silence. And in Cairo, my God, In Cairo, we built a human bomb. Literally. A man named Keller volunteered, former engineer, lost his entire family when the Zarn melted the Suez. We filled his body with a fusion core, rigged to his heartbeat. Then we froze him. Deep stasis tech, dangerous, barely tested. We launched him into their mothership disguised as a corpse. They took him aboard for study. He woke up. 30 seconds later, he became a star. Half the ship was gone. The other half? Doomed, shattered, on fire. The screams didn't make it to space, but we heard them anyway, and still they didn't leave. Their pride wouldn't allow it. They wanted us crushed beneath their ideology, their belief that order must win, that chaos must be corrected. But we weren't chaos. We were the response, a reaction that made them realize something too late. That Earth wasn't just dangerous, it was contagious. Every human they captured, they lost 3 Zarn in return. Every city they leveled, we used the rubble to build traps. Every war crime they committed became a recruitment video for our next wave of maniacs. They wanted to teach us submission. All they taught us was how far we'd go to make sure they never forgot us. My new base was in Iceland now, what was left of it. Frozen winds screamed outside the bunker walls. Inside, we prepped the final wave. Operation Pyre. We'd found their last weak spot, the mind chain. A relay satellite buried in orbit, linked to the entire Zarn fleet's thought sync system. They didn't operate on orders. They operated in hive cohesion, disrupt the chain, and they'd fracture, turn on each other. Collapse. The satellite was protected by 6 Zarn destroyers, and only one ship had the stealth capacity to get close. The Wraith. Built in secret, Earth's first fully invisible combat cruiser. We had one chance. I would be on it, not because I had to be, because I needed to see it. The end, the burning. The moment their pride crumbled into dust and fell through their fingers like every damn mistake they ever made by touching this planet. I stood on the launch deck as the Wraith's systems came online. My crew, all Deathborn. None of us expected to return. That was fine. We didn't want to. We wanted them to remember. Remember that they were warned. And that now? Now they burn. Space is quieter than death. That's the first thing that hits you when you're above Earth in a stealth cruiser made from scavenged Zarn tech and welded human desperation. There's no sound, no breathing, no heartbeat but your own. Just silence, stretching forever, like a graveyard with stars for tombstones. And we were ghosts. The Wraith drifted in absolute blackout mode. No lights, no power signatures, hull coated in radiation-dampening polymers. Its entire crew was offline from any network, because being traceable, even by a micro-ping, would get us atomized in a blink. The Zarn destroyers circling their mind chain relay weren't taking chances anymore. They knew we were coming. They just didn't know how far we'd go. "Approach vector locked," muttered Grant, our pilot, ex-NASA, ex-prisoner, and a man who once flew a prototype shuttle through a thunderstorm just to steal oxygen tanks for his dying brother. "Final range?" I asked, watching the readout flicker through the red glow of my lens. 70,000 clicks. We'll breach visual perimeter in 6 minutes. I turned to the others. 7 of us. That's all it would take. 7 of the most dangerous sons of bitches Earth had left. Spade, explosives specialist. Never met a wire he couldn't twist into a bomb. Broke into a UN munitions depot once, just for fun. Drex, our combat engineer. Said nothing. Carried everything. Once dismantled a Zarn hover tank with a crowbar and chewing gum. Riker, sniper. He lost his left eye, replaced it with a thermal scope surgically embedded into the socket. He hadn't missed a shot since. Banes, wet works, close-quarter killing. Preferably silent. Used to rip people's throats out with piano wire, still kept it coiled in his boot. Nguyen, our coder. Small, fragile-looking, but wrote the AI bombs that caused 3 Zarn ships to start fighting each other until they exploded. And then me, Cole Anders, ex-Black Recon, ex-Captain. Now just angry. We weren't a team. We were a death sentence wrapped in flesh. At 10,000 clicks, we activated Phase 1, Ghost Walk. The Wraith's shell split open like the petals of a dead flower. We floated out in EVA gear laced with thermal camouflage, each of us strapped to a personal glide unit. No propulsion, just momentum. Drifting, silently, toward the satellite ring. The mind chain was a monster. 3 kilometers wide, shaped like a frozen eye, and blinking with power surges that danced across its surface. It didn't just link ships. It linked thoughts. The Zarn used it to coordinate like a hive. No orders, no delay. It was how they stayed fast, efficient, ruthless. It was also their Achilles heel. We latched onto its underbelly. Clamps hissed. Spade went to work, arms deep in the relay's underframe, bypassing their fusion locks. I kept one hand on my pistol, one eye on the telemetry feed. 2 destroyers adjusting vector, Riker whispered into comms. Something spooked them. Doesn't matter, I replied. We're already inside. And we were. The hatch gave with a soft hiss. One by one, we slipped into the beast. Inside, it was everything you'd expect from an alien neural superweapon. Too clean, too smooth, like walking inside a brain. The walls pulsed with blue light, breathing in silence. Fibers, organic, alive, ran like veins across every surface. They didn't build tech, they grew it. Nguyen stared around, eyes wide. The neural core's right above us, 2 levels, but what? There's movement. I clenched my jaw. How many? She hesitated. Hundreds. That wasn't supposed to happen. Intel had told us the satellite was lightly manned, maybe 20 guards. This was a damn garrison. We go anyway, I said. No one questioned it. We didn't come this far to back down now. The first kill was quiet. A Zarn technician walked through a corridor lined with bioluminescent data pods, humming in that awful clicking language of theirs. Baines stepped out of the shadow and slit his throat so fast the creature didn't have time to blink. The body hit the floor with a wet slap. We moved forward. Every inch was hostile. The floors reacted to our steps, shifting slightly. Doors opened before we touched them, too sensitive, too alert. Nguyen kept killing lights and data points as we passed, but the system was starting to wake up. They were sensing us. We hit the core with 13 minutes to spare. A room the size of a cathedral, walls crawling with thought silk, glowing with stored memories. And in the center, the neural heart, a black orb pulsing with golden veins, floating above an altar of bone-like material. From this, they controlled their fleets, their strikes, their orders. Every Zarn ship was connected to this thing. Destroy it, and the whole fleet collapses into chaos. Drex set the charges. Spade wired the timers. Nguyen uploaded Whisper's V3, a new, nastier version of the psychological virus. If we couldn't kill the mind chain physically, we'd drive it insane from the inside. Then everything went to hell. The walls screamed, literally. A shriek of pure sound erupted from the core, an alarm made of pain, doors sealed, lights turned blood red. Then they came. Hundreds. Not soldiers, war priests, the Zarn's elite, clad in bone armor, fused with energy blades that curved like talons, taller than us, faster, and worst of all, silent. They didn't shout, they just charged. What followed wasn't a firefight. It was butchery. We met them head on. Spade went down first, gutted from the side before he could throw his first grenade. Drex took 3 with him before he bled out, laughing like a maniac as he detonated a fusion cell on his own chest. I fought like an animal. 2 pistols, both empty in seconds, then knives, then bare fists. I tore one war priest's jaw off and used it to stab another through the eye. Riker covered us from a ledge. Headshots, clean and final, until one of them climbed the wall and dragged him into the dark. Baines didn't even make a sound when he died. Nguyen was the last to fall, shot in the back as she uploaded the virus. Her last breath was a whisper in my ear. "Make it count." I did. With shaking hands, I slammed the activation switch on the core. The charges lit up like stars. 90 seconds. I ran. Every step burned. Blood poured from a dozen cuts. My left knee screamed with each movement. I didn't care. The Wraith was still cloaked outside. A single pod left. I jumped, launched. The mind chain exploded behind me. Not a fireball, a pulse, a shockwave of broken thought. In orbit, I saw the effect instantly. Zarn destroyers stopped moving, just froze, then started turning on each other. Lasers sliced their own ships in half. Gunports turned inward, confused, blind, screaming through channels in madness. They fell from the sky like dying angels. Earth saw it. Every man, woman, and child looked up and watched the invincible invaders lose their minds and eat themselves alive. I landed in the Wraith's pod bay with bones cracked and soul empty, but I was alive. And I'd won. Not just for me, for everyone. Because the Empire was warned. And now? Now they burn. There's a moment after you destroy something that used to terrify you, where you expect peace, closure, relief. I never got it. Because even as the Zarn destroyers ripped themselves apart over Earth's skies, even as we watched alien steel fall like burning snow, I knew it wasn't over. I knew something was wrong. And I was right. The mind chain collapsed. Yes, their fleet cohesion? Gone. But what no one told us, what no one knew, was that the mind chain wasn't their only brain. It was just the loudest one. There was another layer, one they didn't broadcast, one we never saw coming. And it had a name. The Architect. I heard about it 2 days after the Wraith pulled me from orbit. I was barely alive. My ribs were cracked, fingers shattered, eyes bloodshot from the G-force trauma. They patched me together with morphine, grafts, and a promise of rest. But rest is for men who quit. And I wasn't done yet. They dragged me into Command Post Omega, deep under Iceland's glacial cap. Fewer than 1,000 of us left now. Most of Earth was ruins and ash. Survivors lived underground or in flooded bunkers, skin blistered from Zarn gas leaks or orbital strikes that turned deserts into glass fields. A few leaders were left, if you could call us that. But everyone looked to me, the one who burned their mind chain, the one who told Earth, they bleed too. I didn't want to be a symbol, but I was the last one standing. Briggs met me at the bunker entrance, still alive, still ugly. The man had a stitched face and an appetite for revenge that made mine look polite. He said only one thing. They sent something. It's not a fleet. I followed him inside. What we found was worse than any warship. It was a message. Not text, not words, a feed, live footage of a containment cell, somewhere in the remains of New Cairo, Zarn Dome 6, supposedly abandoned after the Whispers virus infected their command net. But the dome wasn't empty. It was active. And inside that cell? A man, chained, tortured, still breathing. And I knew him. I'd trained him. His name was Elridge, Sergeant, recon sniper. He'd vanished during the Black River campaign. We'd assumed him dead. Now he sat naked on the floor, skin burned, muscles twitching, whispering something over and over. We had the footage on loop. We enhanced it. We read his lips. 2 words. It's awake. The architect wasn't a leader. It wasn't a general or a strategist. It was something older, something the Zarn never talked about in any recovered file, any data core, any intelligence brief. It was what they answered to. A single entity, stored in the depths of their empire, sleeping in neural code. They didn't build it. They found it. In some dead star system thousands of years ago. A weapon? A god? No one knew. But the Zarn had let it into their systems, into their minds, into their evolution. The architect wasn't their brain, it was their soul, and now that the mind chain was broken, it was free. "Explain it to me," I barked. Nguyon's replacement, a nervous woman named Harlow, pointed at a series of rotating 3D models flickering across the table. "We believe the architect was contained through network dependencies, chained by the need for shared thought. You killed that. You killed the system that kept it locked in place." "So what is it doing now?" Harlow licked her lips, pale and shaking. "It's waking up, and worse, it's calling the rest." I narrowed my eyes. "Rest?" She hesitated, then pointed at a star map. Dots began to glow. Not in our system, not in our galaxy. Far beyond. Far, far beyond. "Other Zarn," she whispered. "The exiled. The deep sleepers. The ones we never fought. The ones who never needed to come until now. Within 24 hours, we picked up the energy signals. Not ships, not yet. But pulses, radio blackouts, gravity waves that bent starlight, and something else. Voices, human ones, crying out from old battlefields we'd already cleared. Voices of men and women long dead. We thought it was a trick. Then we checked the DNA. Matches. Perfect matches. Zarn Tech was reanimating corpses, playing with memory, twisting what was left behind into bait. And people fell for it. A family in Argentina followed the voice of their dead son into a crater. They never came back. A unit in Senegal broke ranks after hearing the laughter of a lost commander. They turned on each other, slaughtered everyone. We were losing the war of perception now. Our enemy had shifted from bombs and plasma to memories and illusions. The architect didn't need to destroy us. It just needed us to destroy ourselves. So we changed tactics. Again. That's what we do. We adapt. Briggs and I organized a strike team, smaller than ever, just 5 of us. No command oversight, no green lights, just revenge. We were going to New Cairo, not to rescue Elridge. We knew he was already dead inside. We were going to find the architect's physical core, whatever it was, wherever it was buried, and shove every last ounce of Earth's rage into it. This wasn't a surgical mission. It was an execution. The dome was worse than we expected, half melted, half alive. Its walls pulsed like organs. Floors moaned under our boots. The air tasted like old blood and ozone. We moved silent, tight. Briggs had a flamethrower now. Didn't trust bullets anymore. He'd grown darker since Mexico City. Quieter. His eyes looked sunken. I think he knew what was coming. Knew we wouldn't all leave this place. We followed the voice. Elridge's voice. It came from everywhere. Walls, wires, static. Sometimes it screamed. Sometimes it whispered. Eventually it led us to the core. It wasn't a server. It wasn't a machine. It was a mirror. 10 feet tall, black as void. And in it, ourselves. Each of us. Reflected not how we were, but how we died. I saw myself with a hole in my chest, screaming, alone. Briggs was already lighting the tank. "I'm not playing its games," he said. "This ends now." We placed the charges. 30 seconds. The mirror spoke. Not with sound, with thought. I felt it digging through my memories, my regrets, my betrayals. It showed me my family, my little brother, burning in New York. It showed me Marin, my second in command, the one who betrayed us at Fort Spire, smiling as she sold us out. It showed me failure. And then I laughed. Because that's what humans do when they're face to face with hell. We grin. And we burn it down anyway. The charges went off. The mirror shattered. The dome collapsed, and with it, the final tether of the architect's reach. The voices stopped. The illusions faded. The dead went silent. Briggs didn't make it. He held the line when the mirror cracked, absorbed the backlash, screaming as his skin peeled away. But his fire burned through it all, and I carried what was left of him out on my back. Back at command, they said the pulses stopped. That the distant dots on the star map were quiet again. That the architect's call had ended. But I don't believe it. I think something heard us. I think something else is watching now. And maybe next time it won't be the Zarn. But whoever they send next, they'll find the same thing, a graveyard with Earth's name on it, and a warning, touch this world, and we'll teach you to bleed. The world didn't go quiet after the war. It just got hollow. No more sky fires or orbital drops. No more dome lights burning the night. The Zarn were gone, scattered to the corners of a galaxy that now feared us. Their ships, wrecked. Their command, dead. Their architect, burned out of existence like a failed god. But we didn't win. Not really. What we did was survive. And sometimes that's worse. 3 months after we took down the architect, I stood on a ridge in what used to be northern Nevada. Nothing left but ash plains and bent rebar poking out of cracked concrete. Wind howled through the bones of collapsed overpasses, corpses buried in the sand, some alien, some not. I'd been walking for hours. No destination, no reason, just moving, trying to believe there was still a world under my feet. My left knee ached, synthetic joint still stiff from the orbital fall. My right hand didn't feel pain anymore, just static where nerves used to be. Half my ribs were fused with polyglass. I wasn't a man anymore. I was a weapon with a heartbeat, and even that was fading. Back at Iceland Command, they were still trying to rebuild. A council of scavengers and soldiers trying to organize something like a future. They had names for it. New Dawn, Regenesis, Operation Emberlight, fancy branding for survivors chasing meaning. They wanted me to lead it. They didn't understand. I wasn't built for peace. I'd gotten a message 2 days earlier, delivered by courier drone. No data trail, just a hard paper letter, sealed in plastic. Classified. Eyes only. Cole Anders' inside was a photo. Grainy, satellite captured, black and white, a crater in central Siberia. And inside it, a symbol. One I hadn't seen before. Not Zarn. Human. A flag. Black with red slashes. A new kind of banner. Underneath was a single sentence. They were watching us during the war. Now they think we're weak. Another threat. Another enemy. Another mistake. But before I could head out, before I could chase down this new shadow, something else pulled me off course. Briggs, what was left of him. After New Cairo, I buried what was left near the edge of a glacier shelf. Alone, no ceremony, just a flask of gasoline and a match. But now? Now his grave was open, and there was a note. You burned their god. Now burn ours. No signature. But I knew who left it. Marin, the traitor who sold us out at Fort Spire, my second in command, the one who smiled as she fed our people into the Zarn's hands. I shot her, watched her bleed. She didn't die. Of course she didn't. The ones like her never do. Rumor was, she'd been picked up by one of the warlord factions in former Eastern Europe. That she'd carved out a territory somewhere near the old Romania border, running black market biolabs and harvesting Zarn tech to sell to the highest bidder. She didn't want power. She wanted to replace what the Zarn failed to do. And if she was the one behind that new flag, we were about to have another war. Only this time, it'd be worse, Because it'd be human, I headed east. No convoy, no team. Just me, my gear, and what was left of a soul. Crossed the Midwest on foot. Hit a resistance camp outside what used to be St. Louis. Tents, radiation suits, wired-up shotguns. Everyone there looked like ghosts chewing on dirt. A girl no older than 16 asked me if I was Cole Anders. I told her I wasn't. She handed me a knife anyway. "Said you'd come," she whispered. "Said you'd need this." It was his. Briggs's knife, wrapped in cloth, still stained with Zarn blood. I took it without a word. Sometimes symbols are more powerful than orders. 3 weeks later, I made it to the Carpathians. And that's where I saw it. The Citadel. Built inside a mountain, sealed with blast doors and crawling with mercs, scavengers, ex-soldiers who swore loyalty not to Earth, but to order. That's what they called themselves. The Order of Restoration. Their insignia? A broken chain. Fitting. Traitors always like pretending they're saviors. I didn't wait for intel, didn't care about their numbers. I just started climbing. Took me 4 days to reach the outer wall. Dodged drones, avoided mines, slept in snowbanks, lived off ration paste and stale nicotine tabs. But on the 5th day, I breached the gates. Not quiet, not clean, just brutal. A knife in one hand, a pulse rifle in the other. They tried to stop me. They bled. Every hallway was familiar, built like a military base, modeled after Fort Spire. Her insult was complete. She hadn't just copied my command structure, she'd stolen it and rebuilt it in her own image. At the top level, past biometric locks and retina scans I bypassed with heat-skin masks, I found her. Marin, alive. Beautiful in a cold, dead way. She didn't even reach for a weapon. "Still angry, Cole?" she asked. I raised my pistol. She didn't flinch. "I warned you," I said. She smiled. "You warned them, not me." I pulled the trigger. 3 times. Just like before. Chest, throat, eye. This time I didn't leave until I saw the life leave her eyes. I left the Citadel burning, left their databases fried, left their soldiers scattered. Some tried to fight, some tried to run, some dropped to their knees and begged me to show mercy. I didn't. Because there's a law to this world now. One we carved into the bones of every alien, every traitor, every coward who thought they could tame Earth. We don't forgive. We erase. When I returned to Iceland, they barely recognized me. Beard thick, eyes darker, scars worse. I didn't go to the council chambers, didn't sit at their peace talks. I went to the armory, stocked up, rearmed. Because if Marin tried to become a god, someone else would too, and I'd be waiting. Humanity survived the Zarn. We outlived the architect. But we didn't beat our worst enemy, ourselves. We're still fractured, still dangerous, still armed to the teeth and bleeding from every pore. But here's the thing. We're also smarter, meaner, hungrier. We've seen gods fall. We've watched entire empires drown in fire. And if the next one comes, we won't warn them. We'll welcome them. With knives, with fire. With the same promise we carved into the sky when the first ship burned. Earth is not yours to take. You can only get kicked in the teeth so many times before you start biting back. That's the way I saw it. Earth was scorched, but breathing. The Zarn were broken. The architect was ashes, and Marin, the traitor who sold us out for the illusion of control, was rotting beneath the rubble of her mountain citadel. But peace? Peace was a lie. Even before the war ended, eyes in the dark had been watching. Other empires, other civilizations, advanced, arrogant, observant. They hadn't helped, they hadn't warned. They just watched, studied us like animals behind reinforced glass, waiting to see if we'd die. And when we didn't, when we fought and clawed and burned the Zarn into the void, they got quiet. Too quiet. That's when we knew They didn't fear us, not yet. So we decided to change that. We didn't send diplomats, we didn't send envoys, we sent me. The Wraith had been upgraded since the Mind Chain assault. It wasn't a stealth cruiser anymore, it was something else. Sleeker, meaner. Armed with experimental tech we ripped from Zarn cores and reverse-engineered in underground labs at the edge of civilization. The hull was layered with adaptive camouflage, capable of blending into starlight like smoke. The engines? Quantum fusion hybrids, silent, deadly. We renamed her Ruin, because that's what we brought now. No more defense, only retaliation, only fire. Our first target was a system known to harbor Zarn exiles, traitors even to their own kind, called themselves the Car Collective, a quiet cluster of gas giants orbiting a red dwarf just beyond what used to be charted trade lanes. Our scans showed multiple shipyards, biological manufacturing facilities, slave colonies composed of abducted species, some human. They hadn't come to help Earth, but they'd sure taken advantage of the chaos. I had 2 teams on board. No names, no ranks, just call signs: Ash, Vex, Flint, Reaver, Scorn, and me, Anders. We weren't military. We weren't survivors. We were executioners. We came in low through the gas belt of the second planet. Asteroid cover. Radio silence. The Ruin glided in like a shadow. We hacked their outer comm relay using Vex's spike code, rewrote their system to show a phantom mining vessel passing by. Then we launched the pods, 6 black coffins hurtling silently through void space. No life signs, no signals. They didn't even flinch. That was their mistake. We hit the ground running inside their main spire, a tower of biometal and pulsating nerve cords running up from the slave pits to the command brain. The car weren't machines. They weren't fully organic either. They were grown, spliced, breathing their own tech. Ugly bastards. First floor, control room, 2 guards, gone in under 4 seconds. Scorn's machete opened the first from the groin to the throat. Flint put a round through the second's soft skull so fast his body didn't fall until 3 seconds after the shot. Next floor, slave registry. Dozens of creatures in cages. Some weren't even sentient, just eyes and bones. One of them was human, young, female, skin blue from the cold, voice long gone. We didn't unlock her cage. Ash set thermite on the floor and burned the whole registry down. Mercy would have been crueler. We climbed, level by level. Fire rising beneath us, screams, alarms, fleshy walls pulsing like they were alive and terrified. The car hadn't fought a real war in decades. They weren't ready for us. They'd forgotten what it looked like when humans hunted. At the top of the spire was their core, a central mind pool where their kind merged thought and decision-making. We'd seen it before. Similar to the architect's node, but smaller. Local. We didn't study it. We didn't try to interface. We laced it with nanoplasma and turned it into liquid fire. The whole structure collapsed inward, biometal folding, walls melting, screams echoing through the stone. We didn't run. We walked out of that tower while it burned. The message spread fast. Untraceable comms bouncing across dead networks and scavenged relays. Earth has entered space. Earth is armed. Earth remembers. The next system we hit was already preparing defenses. Didn't matter. We broke them in 2 days. After that, the third system surrendered before we landed. We took nothing. We left only wreckage. Back on Earth, they tried to call me back. The Council. Suits in safe rooms under 6 kilometers of ice. We've achieved deterrence, they said. We've made our point. I crushed the comm unit with one hand and kept moving. Because deterrence wasn't the goal. Fear was. The kind that crawls into alien skin and makes them check the shadows for humans. The kind of fear the Zarn never felt until it was too late. Eventually, we stopped hitting systems for intel. We hit them for fuel, resources, weapons. Slaves, if they were human, we freed. If not, we made a choice. Some we helped, some we left behind. The cold calculus of post-war reality. Not everyone gets saved, because Earth still bled. Cities were gone. Oceans boiled in spots. Radiation drifted in the wind like ashes from a funeral pyre. Most of our food came from fungal vats and synthetic proteins. Children born underground hadn't seen sunlight. They deserved more. And to give them that, we had to keep going. One day, Vex found something. A ship, not Car, not Zarn, older, buried inside the orbit of a dead moon. No lights, no power, but a signal, a single human code, over and over. Echo 7, Earth. Priority red, respond. We boarded it, old tech, pre-war build. Markings from the Andover Deep Space Project, something long believed lost before the Zarn even came. And inside, a message from a man named General Tress. Date stamp, 67 years ago. The feed crackled to life. His face was gaunt, dirty, smiling through the pain. If you're seeing this, it means Earth is still breathing, means the bastards didn't wipe us out. We were part of the fallback, echo fleets scattered across the stars to preserve our kind. We didn't know if we'd ever make it back. He paused, then leaned forward. But if you did make it, if you survived what came next, don't wait for them to come again. Find them. All of them. Burn them. Make them regret the day they ever looked at Earth like it was weak. That night we didn't sleep. None of us. We just sat on the deck of the ruin, staring at the feed, replaying over and over. I looked at the crew, each of them carved from the ruins of humanity, each of them broken in a different way. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were a new breed, war-born, purpose-forged. And I knew then what we had to do. This wasn't a campaign. This wasn't revenge. This was extinction protocol. A cleansing of anything that thought humanity could be prey. Because this galaxy didn't need peace, it needed reminders. They warned the Zarn. The Zarn didn't listen. Now the stars burn, and we're just getting started. There's a silence in deep space no sound can fill. We passed the edge of the Car Collective's territory a month ago. Past their scorched worlds, hollowed moons, vaporized strongholds. No more broadcasts, no more defenses, just wreckage and memory. We left markers behind, burned symbols in orbital debris, scorched skulls sealed in vacuum glass. Human bones, yes, but also Zarn, Car, others, all mixed, a message in every dead language. Earth was here. We should have turned back, gone home. Let the survivors rebuild. Let the children of the underground breathe fresh air again. But peace was never mine to carry. I've buried too much, killed too much, become too much. And I knew I wasn't the only one. There were still whispers across old star paths, ships rerouted, factions regrouping, empires that watched the Zarn fall and thought we were just a fluke, an accident of resistance, a lucky virus of defiance. We weren't. We were the correction. And the next target? We didn't find them. They found us. It started with a signal, encrypted, faint, bouncing off dead satellites and derelict way stations. A voice, calm, smooth, too perfect to be real. I speak for the Vixari Accord. You are beyond your territory. Return to your dead world or face reclamation. Reclamation, funny word, meant nothing to us. We tracked the source, 7 light-years out, orbiting a binary star. A single massive vessel sat in stasis orbit, big enough to eclipse cities. This wasn't a warship. It was a collector. Thousands of pods, slave cells, observation decks, a flying laboratory where civilizations were archived and dissected, where resistance was studied, not crushed. The Vixari didn't conquer. They catalogued. They'd been watching Earth for a long time. But they made one mistake. They spoke to me like I could be reasoned with. The ruin approached without response. We drifted into the vessel's shadow. Its size dwarfed us. Hundreds of kilometers long, an ecosystem of its own. We found an unguarded intake port, always open. Because the Vexari didn't fear intrusion. They didn't expect retaliation. They thought they understood species like ours. Primitive, predictable, weak. We docked. 6 of us, same crew that had torched half a dozen systems. Flint, Ash, Scorn, Vex, Reaver, and me. We breached their chamber of knowledge. Columns of data spires stretched upward into darkness. Floating screens showed species I'd never seen. Species long extinct, some still alive, frozen in cryostasis, blinking behind glass like bugs in jars. And in the center, a pulsing orb of light, the Vexari consciousness. Not a body, not a machine, a collective will, projected through synthetic code and grafted emotion. It spoke through speakers, walls, even our own suits. You are violent, unstable, unworthy of further evolution. Flint stepped forward. We're not here to evolve. He set the first charge. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a reckoning. The Vexari tried to sedate us. Neurogas, sonic frequencies, gravity shifts. Useless. We had already fought gods. They sent drones. Precision. Silent. Emotionless. Reaver caught one mid-air and used it to beat 3 others into dust. We found the central control bank 3 hours in. Not guarded. Because what guards an idea? Vex plugged in and launched the virus. Whispers V6. Not made to confuse, not made to disorient. This one was built to humiliate. We fed the Vexari every image of human suffering, every failed rebellion, every child starved under their boot. But more than that, we showed them our victories, every Zarn vessel we burned, every dome we crushed, every time humanity stood back up and said, "Not today." The virus didn't just infect their systems. It infected their understanding. They tried to stop it. They couldn't. They screamed without sound. And then the ship began to fall. The ruin escaped just as the collector imploded. Its own gravity turned inward by corrupted stabilization cores. It collapsed like a dying star, dragging in its dead, its data, its arrogance. The binary system lit up with its death. And all across the outer systems, the message went out. Earth is not prey. Earth is not saved. Earth is coming. We drifted for a long time after that. Didn't speak, didn't need to. Each of us knew what came next. The ruin was down to 60% functionality. Ammo near 0. Oxygen filters failing. We wouldn't make it back. Didn't want to. Flint died first. Internal bleeding from a previous skirmish. Refused painkillers. Died with a smile on his lips and Earth's flag tattooed on his chest. Reaver stepped out of the airlock a week later. Didn't say why. Just saluted and walked into space. Ash and Scorn. They made it to a relay point on Titan. Sent the last logs home. Said goodbye. Then there was just me and Vex. Vex had a theory. Said there were still deep space anomalies tied to the architect. Things not destroyed. Things buried. Whispers of a last remnant somewhere in the Orion abyss. A black cluster so dense it bends logic. He wanted to go. I didn't, not out of fear. But because I knew if something survived the architect, it wasn't for us to kill. It was waiting for the next enemy, a bigger one, a worse one. And when it came, they'd find our story carved into the cosmos, not just as a warning, as a challenge. I recorded my final message aboard the ruin, orbiting a dying star on the edge of known space. Burnt out, air thick with recycled death. I looked into the lens, broken and cracked. This is Cole Anders, Earthborn, warbound. I am not a hero. I am not a man anymore. I'm the shadow that follows conquest. I'm the answer you weren't ready for. I paused, the flames of the sun painting my face in gold. We were weak once. We were prey once, but not anymore. And then I smiled. Because I knew someone, somewhere, would hear this. Some alien child studying human history. Some empire scanning old frequencies. Some distant soul wondering who we were. And they'd find only this. We warned them. They didn't listen. Now they burn.